to the computer. There you go. So, hello everyone, and as you can see, Desislava has changed into the beautiful version of herself. And let's just admit one more person in there. And today we have the very beautiful, the very wonderful Brian King, and he's going to be talking about how people with neurodivergence sabotage their own success and what to do about it. So neurodivergence is a big topic now, and it's only going to grow bigger and bigger as more people become more aware of it, and the importance of being aware of it. So Brian's training today is going to be essential, especially if you are working with other people. So, Brian, I'm going to mute myself, and the stage is all yours, sir. Do you need to share screen?
No, but I will. I want to preempt this by saying that this needs to be a dialogue, a discussion, so that I can kind of navigate and give you information based upon your unique needs and experiences.
That's cool. So we'll keep an eye on the chat, and if Brian wants you to actually talk, just unmute yourself and talk.
Lovely.
And
so shall I hop in?
It's all yours, sir.
One thing we first need to understand about neurodivergence is it is not a diagnosis. And I see a lot of people who say, I'm getting tested to see if I'm neurodivergent, or I've just realized that I'm neurodivergent. Neurodivergence is not a diagnosis itself. It's an umbrella term for basically every variation in the way you think, perceive, and engage the world. So it doesn't exclude a whole lot. And the more it's out there, the more people are trying to make it seem like, well, this is just everyone. Everyone just needs to be accepted for the different, unique human being they are. And that's a wonderful social attitude or model. Just accept us all. Just help us where we are. We don't live in that world yet. We live in a world that has individual diagnoses, ADHD, autism, dyslexia. So if you happen to be coming from one of those specific camps, it's important that you say you can relate to those specific people, as opposed to saying, I work with people who are neurodivergent, because that includes people with trauma, bipolar, depression, anxiety, anything diagnosable. So you're inviting a lot of people into your world that you do not necessarily have the skill set to accommodate. So if you want to work with people that are ADHD like you, put it out there. Make it clear what you can and cannot help with. Manage expectations. Otherwise, a lot of people who are afraid to take a risk may trust you enough to take the risk only to find that you are unprepared to meet them. So I just wanted to preface with that. My brain's going to go a little all over the place because I have autism and ADHD and dyslexia and all kinds of things. And my brain kind of begins with an unassembled puzzle, knows basically what the final picture needs to look like. So I randomly grab pieces of the puzzle as I'm going. And by the end of it, they all kind of make sense. So one of the many things that people I speak with, like yourselves, do for me is help me remember where I was when I get off track, and remind me what I was talking about, and helping me pull out the knowledge that I already have, because I have very poor working memory, which means it's difficult for me to recall knowledge at the time I need it. So just a little context there. When I mentioned that I was going to talk about 5 things that neurodivergent minds in general do, I was thinking in terms of what happens because of the dysregulation that comes along with being neurodivergent. Now, do you know what I mean by that? Difficulty regulating your mood, managing your thoughts, negative, positive, managing anxiety, threat response. There typically is some kind of dysregulation that goes along with neurodivergence. Has this been your experience as well? And in the absence of being able to manage that dysregulation, you won't be able to get anything done. one of the biggest misunderstandings of neurodivergent is that it is the same as executive function disorders. Meaning that if you are neurodivergent, you have difficulty with time management and memory and scheduling and all that stuff. That's true if you have ADHD or autism, but it's not necessarily as universal for other people. Bipolar depression, anxiety, you might see it, but it's for different reasons. So you can't approach those things in the same way. One of the things that really holds people back in general is poor self-awareness. Socrates' first rule was what? Anyone? Or am I just the only, Greek philosopher nerd here? His first rule is know thyself, which means no BS. If you've got a bias, a prejudice, a preconceived notion, an assumption, own it, examine it. Understand how it does or does not serve you. And I can tell you, as somebody lifelong neurodivergent here, there is a buttload of baggage. Just by virtue of continuing to bump up against the world. A world that doesn't support you, supports you inconsistently, doesn't understand you, criticizes you because of everything you do that isn't normal. So you need to unpack that and reestablish trust with people before you will even let them in. So you can find that in a lot of your marketing materials, you're looking to break through that wall to get them to even trust you and trust you enough to be vulnerable to take a risk with you. And that's one of the most important things to communicate. I'm safe to take a risk with, because I know that everyone else in your life, or at least what you've decided, everyone else in your life has screwed you. You reached out for help and you never got it. So there is so much anxiety around this next step that I take could ruin everything if I trust the wrong person. And we're going to come back to these topics as we begin discussing it more. The next thing that people with neurodivergence in general struggle with is all or nothing thinking. And this is the one of the most paralyzing paradigms that they have, because you only grant yourself two options in solving problems, and they are two extremes, and neither of them tend to fit the bill. It's like two bowls of poop, and it's a decision between, texture, but both options suck because you don't allow yourself to examine the gray in the middle where all of those options are. And one of the reasons, at least through my own self-reflection, is all or nothing makes it easier to make decisions when you have difficulty prioritizing, sequencing things, deciding which should go first, which step is next. So if you only give yourself two options, you can feel in control and you can feel certain. What you can't feel is better. You're still going to feel anxious because the options you're choosing don't quite work, and they require you indulging in an extreme experience, which is usually overwhelm or apathy. And it's hard for them to kind of find a place in between. Now, if somebody in your life, could be you on occasion, were speaking in all or nothing terms, what would that sound like? Des has just launched a new challenge, and you're looking at the worksheets and you're looking at it. What is one of the things that an all or nothing person might say to themselves to sabotage their efforts? They might say, I can't do all this. Right? How am I going to get all of this done? How am I going to do everything that's required? Well, the easiest answer is you don't. You never do. You take one step, then another, then another. If your brain has difficulty chunking and breaking things down, or it is used to responding to things strongly, either due to trauma or emotional dysregulation, their first inclination is going to be, how do I fit this experience into one of my extreme slots? So you may be giving them something like, hey, let's think about this. It's going to work out. I think we just need a plan. And they say, we don't need a plan. This is already too much. I can't do this. Anybody ever experienced that? You try to frame it in a more balanced way, they respond by trying to sell you on the catastrophic view of things. Because that's how their brain allows them to see the world. It's all or it's nothing. And if that's your default setting, it's very difficult to imagine taking on anything that will not overwhelm you. Because your assumption is that it will. So one of the things you do is procrastinate. And when you do procrastinate, it's because you think, I need a big chunk of time to just knock this out. Anybody think that way? That's all or nothing. I need to do it all in one sitting or not at all. And how often does life give you that? I mean, if you were in a library and locked the doors and turned off all of your devices and were able to maintain your attention long enough to knock it all off without getting distracted and tangented, mostly by your internal noise, that can slow you down more than anything. But it's knowing how to understand what your brain is doing. What does it want you to do versus what do you want to do? Part of self-awareness, knowing thyself, is being very familiar with your inner critic. Not in a way that you want to believe everything it says, because it's a liar for the most part. It's there strictly to try and keep you safe, keep you alive, and it'll tell you anything it needs to accomplish that. If you want to take a big risk, it'll tell you you're a loser, you're not good enough, why are you even bothering? People are going to laugh at you. Anything to get you to not take that risk. Because in an all or nothing brain, well, if I take the risk and it fails, I will die. Psychologically, emotionally, physically, whatever it is, it will be devastating. If those are your options, where is there opportunity for resilience, for learning, for reflection in that all or nothing paradigm? There's only things go extraordinarily well, and then people will continue to expect this from me, and I can't live up to those expectations, so I need to sabotage myself. And then the other side of it is I'm going to look absolutely terrible, and people are going to be humiliated, and then my life will be over. So now I have two extreme reasons, two choices, both give me reason not to do it. So now I'm paralyzed. I don't do anything. And this can be anyone with neurodivergence who is so used to being raised with feedback like, pull yourself together, use your skills, be more mindful, whatever it is they've been peppered with that puts all of the responsibility for managing themselves on them with no appreciation of the environment, the relationships they're in. We all live in a context. One of the reasons we do so much better in communities like this is because we understand that we're in it together, that we need each other, that we balance each other out. And I was talking to a friend recently. She's going to contract me to do like EAP work for all of her employees so that they get the support and training they need on self-care to maintain that stellar reputation and services they have. And as I was talking with her, we realized that she has ADHD, but she's kind of a mirror of my abilities. I can follow through on a plan if it's well laid out. I can understand the natural progression, but don't ask me to create the plan. My brain simply doesn't do it. I can be very laser focused in the moment, catch all the nuance of what's happening right here. But if you ask me to plan a year or 5 years out, I can't even imagine it. My brain just doesn't go there. But if I sit down with people whose brains do that, it's almost like it appears. Almost like body doubling, but mentally, I can see what they're seeing. It's kind of weird. But with her, we realized she can make the plan. She just doesn't follow it after she does it. But I can follow the plan. So between the two of us, she can create the plan and I can be responsible for accountability. But if she were to say, well, you know, I make all these plans, but I never follow through, so why bother? I'll just live in the moment. What does that assume? If she says, well, I just can't do it, so that's just the way it is. What is she assuming? She's assuming help is not available or help is not an option. Now, let's be honest, folks. What different messages have you gotten through the years about asking for help and the value of it? I'm seeing some affirming grins. Anyone care to volunteer? I don't want to be the only one talking. Yeah, life's hard. Suck it up. That's one.
Just wanted to make sure that it's okay that we engage like through voice and video and not just the comments.
Yes. Sorry. I'm wired for interruption, so I welcome it as well. Did you want to say something, Stas?
No, I forgot the question.
Hey, that is my world. Write it all down. Well, what I was getting at here is that people that are neurodivergent, people in general, tend not to self-advocate. They tend not to speak up and say, I'm stuck. I don't get it. I'm not sure what to do next. Instead, they believe, and this is back to the all or nothing again, I do it independently or it doesn't count. And that starts in school. Did you try it yourself? How long did you try it for? Go back and try it again. So many efforts to get help are constantly pushed back. Used to doing it all myself. Now, Paul, I want to invite you to say something about that, but just from some of the people that I've experienced or worked with in the past, is you make that effort. You try to reach out, you raise your hand, and you're rebuffed, or the help you get is not useful because the person teaching you doesn't understand neurodivergence, doesn't understand how it shows up in you, so they don't know your particular needs. They just know what you should be doing. And they keep pushing you in that direction. Stas, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is from all that you can just, we got in our entire life. Like, why can't you just make a plan and follow it? Why can't you just tidy up your workspace? Why can't you just this? And
that's a great example.
When you got a lot of this, and for you, it's not just, right? For us, it's a lot of struggle.
And it's incessant. You know, the criticism is not occasional. It's like, you can do nothing right. You know, when I was growing up, hyperactive little kid, why can't you be more quiet? Why can't you settle down? Why are you so hyper? As all day long, if it wasn't my teacher, it was my mother. And it's very difficult to find any baseline of your own competence and confidence when those things are not pointed out to you. And if they are pointed out, they feel like an accident. Because one time you got it right, and then you're trying to figure out, how did that happen? See, you can do it. I knew you could do it. You just got to keep doing it. I don't know how I did it that time. Maybe my needs were met just right. My bucket was filled to just the capacity I needed to be effective. But I don't even know what my needs are. I don't know how they got met, who met them. So it was like a planet aligning kind of moment. But the more you take the time to know yourself in a compassionate way, I see far too often people talking about, well, if you can face yourself honestly, if you can look honestly at those dark corners or those shadows, and man, let's just make it as scary as hell. I refer to myself as a treasure hunter. And when you are digging for treasure, I think of the American Gold Rush, because people had to go through the harsh desert and the scorpions and the hot temperatures and the cacti and eating squirrels or whatever was out there. Sorry, Des, squirrels just popped into my head. Des loves squirrels. But they knew they had to get dirty, cut, sick in order to find the treasure. that they need to go in the cold water of the river, that they needed to get their fingernails broken and their knees busted in order to dig in the ground. But why did they keep going? Why didn't they just say, oh, this is dirty and sweaty, my hair is too frizzy and I don't want to bother with this, it's ruining my nails. Why didn't they just give up? Because they envisioned the treasure. They knew it was there. They just needed to keep digging. So as someone that is struggling like neurodivergent in every possible corner, it helps to have one small carrot or a light at the end of the tunnel that you envision, that you know it's there even though you can't see it. And you are going to keep digging and getting dirty because you know it's worth it. And when you're neurodivergent, let's say part of that is difficulty connecting with others, either because of executive function difficulties, mood dysregulation, trauma, whatever gets in the way. It all boils down to those moments of connection with another human being when you feel seen or who you are and valued. That's the treasure. Because I don't know that I need to tell you, when you are talking to somebody who really gets you, man, do you light up like you've just been plugged into the wall socket? Or is that just me? Yeah, those moments are priceless. And imagine having more of those. What would that do for helping you establish greater trust, more willingness to take risks and be vulnerable? Because the more of yourself you allow into your awareness with compassion, the more of yourself you have to give. And the people that follow me see how raw I am in my posts. And that's primarily to model to other people. I invite you to join me here. You felt your entire life that it's unsafe to feel, to admit to being afraid when you're a guy, to, as a mother, admitting you don't have it all together and you don't wear a cape. To find people that you can have those moments with. That's the stuff that fills you with the courage and the trust and the confidence to go for it. Because you know, and this is another part of the self-advocacy piece, you know you're not alone. We're all on the same team, and the team is all about each of us winning. And if we collaborate, we get together in this philosophy, this approach to life, amazing things happen. But it begins with understanding that other people are assets, are resources. They're not adversaries. They're not your competition. Because let's face it, how can you connect with someone vulnerably that you are in competition with? And that includes yourself. Because if you keep saying things in your own mind like, I'm stupid, I'm always screwing up, what's wrong with me? How close are you going to want to get to that person? But if you think of yourself, wow, you had a human moment there. That was less than perfect, but that's kind of how we're designed. Human beings are essentially designed for growth, for curiosity, for learning, for innovation. You can't do that and know it all at the same time. You can't do that and always be jockeying to be right. It's more important to be teachable. You know, the smartest person in the room is typically the one that asks the best questions, not the one that has the best answers. And that's definitely something that we all benefit from, is greater curiosity. Now, I think we discussed 1, 2, 3, here's 4. We've kind of alluded to this a little bit. There's no real baseline understanding of what good enough is. When have I done good enough? When am I good enough? And that's kind of like what Stas and I were discussing. So much criticism. We rarely hear, wow, you made a great decision just then. Or, hey, awesome job. There's usually pretty good, but you should have done this. Or next time do that. there's usually something that's not good enough about it. And it's left to us to decide, what is our feeling of good enough when we can say, I did my best? Because in the absence of that, it tends to be decided by other people. How often are we chasing the approval of a teacher, a boss, or a parent? Do you like it? How good did I do? Isn't this great? And you postpone feeling good until you get approval. We do that for our coaches. We do it for our spouses. But what if before we even went to them, we decided, man, I'm happy with this. I'm proud of this. That's one of the criteria I have for my writing when I post one of my long posts on Facebook, is I need to be happy with it first. Then I don't care how people respond to it. It would be nice if they looked at it and said, oh my God, this is the most paradigm shifting thing since Mr. Rogers. Where do I sign? It'd be nice if that was the case, but it more than anything needs to represent the authentic me, who I am, what I stand for, where I'm coming from, no BS. So people see, this is who I get to connect with should I choose to reach out. Oh, I'm seeing all kinds of fun stuff in there. What's happening in the chat here, Daz? People getting excited about the new features?
Yeah, apparently there are, for some people, there's the ability to reply to certain comments now and
Yeah,
create.
I just noticed that yesterday.
Thread. I haven't seen that before. I can't create it, but it is showing me the reply box. So
Yeah.
Interesting.
So to circle back, who here has some sense of what good enough means for them?
Like for me, it personally, like it's a lot because marketing is such a numbers game. So for me, it's a lot of the time it's been like, are my clients having results? Are they having sales? Is it, am I worth it to my clients? And I'm like earning myself in for my clients. And it's just been like so tough being in it, to be honest.
How about just being good enough as a person?
Yeah, but they're not paying me for that.
Yeah.
I wish they did. I would be rich.
If the more times you intercede with yeah, but, you negate the original question. So let's answer the original question first. How about in terms of yourself, Sas? Do you have a sense of, I'm good enough regardless of what's happening around me? Let me throw this little exercise out to you. I gave this to my clients and it's worked really well, mostly because it's simple. You can ask yourself, what am I if I fail? The response is, I'm good enough. What am I if somebody is upset with me? I'm good enough. It's important to train your brain to respond to those experiences with a reinforcement or an acknowledging of your inherent worth, as opposed to thinking, I don't feel good enough because I haven't earned it. That's something that's really important to get out of your thinking. Worth is inherent. The universe wanted you or would not have made you. I'm not saying the universe has some intention or purpose behind it, but water happens because there are laws of the universe that allow it to happen. That allows the two O's and the H to bond and create water. So if you weren't intended somehow, you would not be here. In that, the capacity you have as a human being, that 1 in 400 trillion chance, you could have been an amoeba, but you're a human being. That speaks volumes of your potential. What holds you back is all of the stuff you've believed or decided about yourself over the years based on the negative feedback you've been given. And so much of that needs to be unpacked before you even take action. Because we'll want to give people worksheets and videos and all this stuff and say, here's what you need. It's greatly organized to accommodate your executive functions. But what if that ain't your problem? What if your problem is trauma? What if your problem is this brutal negative self-talk that you've convinced yourself is absolutely true? And now someone needs to come along and ask this question. We were just discussing this, Becky will remember this from one of our recent calls. You ask yourself, why that? You know, someone just gave me a compliment and I felt very standoffish and very guarded. My thoughts started going, oh man, that if this person only really knew the real me, they would just be so revolted. And then you can step back and ask yourself, why that? I could have responded any way to this person's compliment. I could have said thank you. I could have given them a hug, but I didn't do that. I kind of got icky. Why that? That's an invitation to introspect and get to know yourself better. Because if that response stands between you and taking action, you want to get it out of there. Because as much as we might want to accommodate people's executive functions, that's not what prevents action. It's all of this self-sabotaging, this beliefs that I can't ask for help. Help is not available to me. People don't get it. They're not like me. All of these barriers and divisions that you throw up to keep help unavailable to yourself. And it's all an inside game. And that all needs to be called out, looked at for what it is. It's your brain trying to protect you from a risk that you have decided is catastrophic because of the all or nothing thinking. The last one that I chose, and of course, there are probably 50, is, and this is a cultural issue, it's not just with neurodivergent, the inability to express anger. Because you can't tell me that you don't go through your life feeling frustrated, resentful, angry at people because of what they did and didn't do, who they weren't that you needed them to be. But what happens if you express that anger and frustration? Are you rewarded? Hey, way to blow your top, kiddo. Anyone want to chime in on the virtues and cultural values around anger?
Anger's seen as a negative. It's seen as, oh, bloody hell, listen to that person ranting away. Oh, I don't want to listen to that person. But
it's like the epitome of loss of control.
Yeah. But I remember, you know how my mind works with TVs and movie references. There was an episode of Family Guy, and he was invited onto the TV station. And his bit was called, do you know what grinds my gears? And it's just a rant, and everyone loved it. When people don't realize that if they have a bit of a rant about something, usually it's about something that others resonate with, but they always think that it's like oh, what's the actor's name? It was the movie where the volcano was going to blow, and you got this guy on the radio, and he's seen as this conspiracy theorist, and he's ranting away, and the image is him on top of the hill on his own ranting away. And that's how people that's how people think they are seen when they're starting to have a bit of a rant, show some anger, show some emotion. And in reality, a lot of the time, it's just people going, I bloody agree with that. But you don't think that way. You think it's like, oh, people's going to look at me. And it's all about because I'm writing about it now in my guide, about the worry that you're going to be judged negatively from what you're saying. And actually, how dare you show some emotion?
And some of the feedback I remember getting when I was growing up is, get a hold of yourself, go to your room until you can calm down.
Yeah.
What's
I
the
was
matter
gonna
with you?
say,
I mean,
for
who's
me
that?
too, like it goes back to what Brian was talking about with trauma earlier. Because a lot of the people in BBS know my mom and I have a very toxic relationship. But like as soon as you said anger, my first thought was, you know, if I get angry and I'm loud, or if I say something, you know, if I drop an F-bomb because I'm upset, it's either sit down and shut up, or I would get a response of, you're not going to yell at me in my house. Or as I got older, it was stop being so dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
So
Anger's
after,
never validated, right?
no, like, and that's, I think, where I've struggled as I got older, is because the entire time I grew up, it was never validated. I was never allowed to be angry. And so now it's almost like I don't get angry about anything. And even my husband says that. He's like, you don't get mad. Like you get frustrated or you get overstimulated, but you never really get angry about anything that you should get angry about. And I said, well, when it's beat into you for 30 plus years, your brain eventually just stops doing it.
When your needs are not met, you stop needing.
Right.
Mandy, I am giving you permission to swear your tits off whenever you want.
And I'm giving you permission to live stream that, because that would be one hell of it. You remember the moose that dropped both its antlers at the same time? Did you see that one? That's what I'm
Yes.
imagining.
And that is probably what it would be like if once I get to that point, and Darren knows we've talked quite a bit. I'm working on kind of re-engaging my emotional patterns and getting to a point where it's okay to be that way. And that started because I'm teaching my daughter to be that way, my 5-year-old. And when she gets mad about something in our house, we don't go to your room and calm down. We have a conversation with her, and she's 5, and I'll sit down and say, okay, do you feel like you can talk about it, or do you need to take a minute and take a deep breath and then we can talk about it? It's okay that you're angry. I just can't understand what you're trying to tell me when you're angry.
That's good. There's
And
sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted
no, go
to
ahead.
throw this out there. I'm thinking about it. One of my superpowers is I can look at the cloud, the gray cloud, and go right to the center and figure out what the root of it is. And one thing that I found really works well with people that are kind of having an emotion that looks somewhat like helplessness or desperation.
Yep.
Very, very sad, very, very angry, very, very afraid. The question I like to ask is, what's not going the way it's supposed to right now?
And that makes total sense, because and that's what we're trying to teach her at 5, is how to be able to identify not just the emotion, because like in school they teach her, oh well, you're angry, you're this, you're that, but
Well,
we
okay,
want her
but
to
what are
focus on
emotions
just
for?
that.
What are the fundamental reasons we have emotions?
Because there's usually a cause. There's some need not being met, essentially.
Our emotions are designed to get us to move in response to an opportunity to meet a need. Okay. When you are feeling threatened by the saber-toothed tiger, you have the emotion of fear sometimes that rears up and says, okay, we're engaging all the resources we need to get the hell out of here so we can survive. This emotion of fear really grabs your attention and wakes you up and makes you very present with what it is we need to do. If you are more inclined to respond with fight, the emotion coming up is going to be anger. So you can push back. The emotion of sadness is one of the ways that we communicate vulnerability to our community. And we invite them to come in and support us and hold us up a little bit. Now, the people that believe that they need to do everything independently and be strong may not allow themselves to cry or be seen crying, because they haven't learned crying as a means to get your needs met. They've learned it maybe as a means of criticism because it's considered weak. It's too vulnerable. So there's another emotion that's negated. Well, if you're not allowed to cry, how are you going to get in touch with your vulnerability, what your deeper needs are, what your deeper wants are? How are you going to learn to communicate them? You're not, because you're so busy compartmentalizing them, pretending that they're not there because they were not supported. So back to the beginning, know thyself, the emotional intelligence of knowing your emotions, when they show up, what are the triggers, what's the self-talk that goes along with it. Those are all of your opportunities to tweak, not do a major all or nothing overhaul that's going to upset your world. A baby step. One step after another. Like, was it Mandy, I think you were talking about with your daughter? Just these little
Yeah.
baby steps. You just plant seeds and ease them along the path. If you ask them to do too much too soon, it's too risky, too frightening, and they're going to shut down on you.
Exactly.
Now, Stas, I saw there was a hand up. This is the open forum portion of the call, where I welcome you to unmute and ask questions.
I think Stash is out walking at the moment, so she
Okay.
may not be able to say anything at the moment.
So, as promised,
There she
I'm
is.
sorry.
There.
Yes,
that's cool.
I'm just about to clean up poop after my dog. Perfect timing as always. Anyways, I think a lot of this comes from our parents' generation's standards for good parenting, right? So what is a good parent? It's the one who can keep their child in check. Like, if your child has a tantrum, you're a bad parent. And what is a tantrum? It's literally us expressing our emotions.
Yeah, and a
for
tantrum is
two-year-old,
typically, I don't have the words, I just have the emotion.
exactly. And for a 2-year-old, that's a very normal thing.
Oh, it is so normal for a 2-year-old.
Yeah, and I even can see it from my mom, where at some point we visited her, and my daughter, she did not want to do afternoon nap because she was having so much fun. It's so much funner with everything else. And my mom would could you please take her into another room, because she started to cry, I don't want to go to sleep, no. And she's like, could you please take her to another room? It's can you please get rid of this distraction for us? That's not an appropriate behavior for a child. Just 2.5, that's a very appropriate
What, is she
behavior for a
supposed to be
child.
drunk on whiskey or something? What?
And she's when children do that, you're supposed to take them to another room. They should not behave like this in front of the others. And I'm like, that's such normal behavior.
Well, see, when I hear that in a classroom, and teachers don't like me for one of these reasons, I said, far too often the measure of success is, I don't want to see that you have any problems. They want you to use your coping skills. They want you to hold it together better. And it's not about your needs at all. It's about the teacher's needs. Don't disrupt the classroom. So you are expected to just suck it up, deny your needs, not ask for breaks or anything, because it's disruptive. So all of these interventions and supports that are supposedly in service of helping these kids become independent, full functioning members of society, all about making other people happy. So when someone says, take your kid out of here, they're being too noisy, they're doing this, they're doing that, what they're saying is, I cannot regulate my own stress level. And so your child needs to feel the repercussions of this.
I also have a 15-month-old, so I can very much relate with what Stasha just said. Because my 15-month-old is starting to talk, but we understand that when she's crying for something or when she's screaming, it's not, it's a communication barrier. She doesn't have the word to tell us what's bothering her. And it drives me insane when my family is like, well, just go put her down for a nap. Okay, she doesn't necessarily need a nap. It may be that she's thirsty. It may be that she's so hungry. It may be that she's in pain because she's in a growth spurt. You can't just label, oh, she's crying, she's cranky, go put her down for a nap. Okay, sleeping 15 hours a day is not going to change if she's thirsty.
Yeah,
Sorry.
This is your opportunity to learn how to co-regulate with your child.
Right.
And if people are unfamiliar with that, co-regulation is when you teach a child self-soothing because you know how to self-soothe. And then you can be with them and whispering in their ear and cradling them and doing what you can to help them calm down. And they eventually learn how it feels and what the process is so they can duplicate it. But if you just keep putting them down so they can cry themselves to sleep, they learn it's all on them. You're not there for them. And if they cry and need something, you won't respond.
Exactly. And that's why we don't do the cry it out method.
Right.
We don't believe in doing that, because we didn't do it with our first daughter and we had great success with it. If she has a problem, she will come to her dad or I and say, you know, even if she doesn't necessarily know what's going on, she's old enough now to say, I don't know what's wrong. And we can kind of talk her through it, and we can say, okay, what made you feel that way? What were you doing? What happened? And even her teachers at school now say, you know, for a 5-year-old, she's very good about knowing what triggered her.
That's beautiful.
And she's learned the newest concept she had was the concept of frustration, when she can't do something the way she wants to do it. So we've taught her what frustration feels like. And now she can come to us and say, well, mommy, I got frustrated. Okay, why did you get frustrated? And we kind of talk her through it. But then once we're done talking about it, we sit down and say, what can we do to make you less frustrated? Do you need help with something? Is this something you want to just put down and come back to later? But the funny thing is, I learned all of that as an adult because I didn't have it as a child.
Yeah, we're sure as hell not taught that.
No.
And kudos to you for just being curious enough to realize that there's a better way to go about this. And it's a matter of through trial and learning, because I don't like celebrating the error. That's kind of a given. You know, trial and error. Oh, just keep making mistakes. No, you keep finding opportunities to learn something new. The reframe makes it less a failure and more empowering.
And I think that, like I said, that comment you made about, for a lot of us, it comes from trauma.
Yeah,
And
so many people with neurodivergence grow up without their basic needs being met.
And that was where, when I realized that, it changed when I became a parent. I had learned so much about the needs that I didn't have met growing up that it kind of became a mission as a parent. I'm never going to let my children feel that way, because I don't want them to have to go through what I'm going through as a 30-something now, where I have to relearn that it's okay to ask for help. I have to relearn to say to somebody, I am not okay. And for so many years, because I had been taught, you don't ask for help, you figure out how to do it.
Here's another
Or-
reframe. I try to find the kind of thinking that's most empowering and less likely to be canceled out by self-sabotage. When it comes to, you know, I'm not okay, there is too much emphasis on the I. The connection with other people is about we. So what thing that I prefer thinking about in terms of saying, you know, I'm not okay, I refer to the situation instead. I'll say something isn't working. Because I don't want the problem in my mind to be me. I am not okay. No, I'm fine. I'm enough. Remember that exercise from earlier? I am enough. When I'm struggling, what am I? I'm enough. Just my needs are not met at the moment. So I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling upset. My needs not being met doesn't mean there's something wrong with me. It means between the situation and myself, there is a poor fit. Something's not working here. Now, of course, I've been rambling and bouncing all over the place like my brain does, and hopefully I've been able to communicate something coherent. But the bottom line here is that this is something you learn about in an ongoing way. You don't read a book, go to a workshop, or watch a slideshow and say, yes, I have a grasp of neurodivergence. I've been working with this at least 25 years, immersing myself in it from top to bottom. I mean, the kind of nuance that I brought up today comes from doing the treasure hunting within the depths of my own trauma and emotion. so that I am able to get around, through, or over the stuff that prevents me from taking action. And that's where the work is. What am I doing that's preventing me from sharing my treasure with the world? Because when you can get all that stuff out of the way, all of a sudden, boom, you bring all of yourself to the table. And that's one of the things that's really missing out there, is that people often bring a very compartmentalized version of themselves to the table. They're the alpha male, or they're the completely polished professional. Everything is very sterile. They don't talk about their emotions. They don't talk about their insecurities. They don't talk about what makes them human. And that is where our ultimate strength is going to be coming from that. Julie, I see your digital hand raised.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about anger. See, I was never exposed to anger as a child through teenage years, until I met my first husband. And he was extremely aggressive and extremely angry. There were reasons behind it, but I was afraid of anger because I didn't know what it was.
So you're saying you never felt it?
I never felt it, or if I did, I didn't know what it was.
Well, let me ask you this. Did you do a lot of crying?
Yes, but I thought that was because of my depression.
Okay. It was also because your anger needed another way out. And tears tend to be more accepted than anger.
Okay. Well, and then, something that also didn't help when I was married the first time, he was physically and mentally abusive. And every single time that something like that happened, I was in a deep depression, and he would ask me why, or, why I was feeling that way. And I couldn't explain because I didn't know where the depression was coming from. At that time, I hadn't been diagnosed as bipolar, but
Well, you also weren't encouraged to develop any kind of emotional awareness either.
no, my parents were very flat. They didn't show emotion. First time I saw my mom cry was when I was 8 years old, after my parents had been divorced, or 6 years old, and we were spending the weekend with my dad for the first time.
Very confusing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anybody have any big takeaways from this conversation?
You can unmute yourselves rather than put it in chat, by the way.
Yeah, my cerebral multitasking is non-existent. Well, if it's helpful, I, like a lot of people in BBS, have half Voxer days, have different Voxer things. So I can be accessible to people as needed, because not everybody needs one more community. Let's face it, we're all doing memberships, right? And it's very difficult to keep up with that. But when it comes to understanding the finer points of neurodivergence, which is where the best shifts and opportunities lie. Because as we pointed out, risk aversion is huge with neurodivergence because of the all or nothing thinking, the trauma history. But if you can narrow things down to one small baby step that upon execution, the person feels, I can do this. Wasn't as bad as I thought, then give them another. But one of the tricks is knowing where to make the shift. And that's a lot of where my expertise comes in. Yes, Julie, it will be available as a replay. And I hope so, because I don't remember anything I said. But it's pretty typical to my lousy working memory.
Yes,
Thank
we're
you.
recording it, and it'll be up probably within an hour of finishing this.
Yahoo. Oh, Becky, she put in the chat that I'm the best support to have. Yeah, Beck's been in my community since the beginning, years ago. And she's just an absolute rock star, as you all know.
Yeah. Brian, you told me we need to have a chat. I guess now I know why.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can spot my own kind from the other side of a football stadium, practically.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Any final questions, comments? Do I owe anybody apology for taking an hour of their time they won't get back?
Hey, my camera, like I can see myself, but I cannot or anybody else. That's how
We can see you, Stas.
self-absorbed I am, apparently. Yeah, I don't know what happened to Zoom right now. I mean, I do have a question if you have like a couple
Bring
more
it.
minutes you want to
Yeah, bring it
spend.
in.
For me, it's a lot of like growing up, a lot of event happening in my life in terms of not being chosen, right? So for me, honestly, like I've always been like the outsider. Always been like, if I ask somebody in high school if can I sit at the table, they were like, no, the seat is taken. Like at that point, I did have a couple of friends, amazing friends. I'm still friends with these people. But like honestly, just never being chosen for anything, right?
I can so relate.
Including, yeah, and it's not like for like, oh, poor me, but I can just feel it transferring into my business. Like I still get like almost surprised if people to choose to work with me instead of somebody else. Oh,
Well,
Iris.
I got to be honest with you, Stas. I feel that quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the ways I counter that is I remember when I was studying relationship coaching, and the guy who founded it said, the one who is perfect for you also thinks you are perfect for them. So when you're chasing someone and saying, oh, come on, I know we're meant to be together. I know we're meant, but they don't buy it. That doesn't mean you need to try harder to convince. It means this person is not aligned with you. So what is helpful to be clear about in the messaging is who are you choosing to work with so they can see themselves in what you're writing. Because all of the people that also have felt left out and not chosen, who don't think they're good enough to be for someone to take a chance on them, choose those people in your messaging if you want to work with them. But I'll tell you, when you grow up being invisible, Stas, like we did, after a while, we make ourselves unchoosable because we stop putting ourselves in a position to be chosen.
Exactly. So it's like the all or nothing of like, why should I spend half an hour and lots of mental energy on the sales post if nobody's going to choose me anyways, right? That's like,
well, because being chosen, it does not boil down to a single transaction. It's how do you repeatedly show up and make yourself welcoming enough where people who maybe have some trust issues see that you are consistent, you can be trusted, and they'll start to reach out to you. The lady that's hiring me to help her agency, she and I have been connected on Facebook for 10 years. Now, I'm not saying that that is the overnight success formula. Befriend people, stay connected with them for 10 years, and someday they may show up and hire you. But it just speaks to the consistency. But I don't want to oversimplify the solution. This is a longer conversation, but I'm just hoping to kind of point your thinking in a different direction. It may be more resourceful for you.
Definitely. And the funny thing is I have so much proof that it's not true. And yet my brain still is like somehow stuck there, right?
Because your mind and your heart are not in alignment. Your body still believes there's danger. That's why we all know far more than we ever apply. The risk is in the application, not the knowledge.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Well, thanks everyone. I know you have stuff to do. I'm grateful that you all came and sang Kumbaya with us for this hour. And
oh, we got, Bri, before you go, we got Mandy has got her hand raised.
Can you tell I'm auditory and not visual? I don't see hardly any of this stuff. Mandy, I can see you now.
Yeah, I decided to step outside so that I could actually go on camera without my little one deciding she was going to try to steal the phone. Doesn't matter if she knows the people or not. At 15 months, she goes, ooh, there's somebody on video. Let me be the
she's listening. Remember that shit talking you did when I was 15 months, Ma? Oh, I remember all that.
Yeah. So you actually brought up something just a minute ago about still being in that fear state, like your body still is in kind of that state of fear. So that in my mind triggered. So when you say that, that's basically being in that fight or flight response all the time, correct?
Being in survival mode. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm guilty of this. I will tell you, I have probably
It
been in.
ain't just you. Let's see, show of hands. Anyone else feel like they're in survival mode a lot? Anyone?
Yeah, like I feel like I have lived in survival mode for at least the last 10 years, and I'm trying very hard to break that cycle. My question be, what is your suggestion in taking those baby steps, right? You said it's all about the baby step, something that every day. I am struggling because I'll do really good for a couple of days and then I will hit a day where it's just like, nope. And I feel like I go right back to where I was.
Well, start looking at your boundaries.
Okay.
Not only where you say no and what you say yes to, because oftentimes moms will say no to a nap and yes to doing more. Right?
Yeah.
Especially when you got a little one. The kid's asleep, I got to run around and do all this stuff. Self-care, no. I am an award-winning martyr. I'm not going to do anything for myself. So
Yeah.
when you look at the boundaries, it's not only which ones can you set, but which ones can you stick to, in part because you see them as an act of self-love, self-respect, as opposed to I'm denying someone else by setting a boundary. If you see it through that lens, guilt will collapse that boundary.
Every time.
So there's a couple of pieces to that. Yeah.
I am that person where so even when I was a teenager, like my friends used to call me Mama Me because I took care of everybody else. And if something went wrong, I was the first one that was there. And I literally that way. And now it's almost like when I say no, the guilt sets in. Like, oh, do they have somebody else?
If a big part of your identity is as a rescuer, then by setting a boundary in your mind, you have to sacrifice getting a need met. And that feels too win-lose. So it's probably going to be more advantageous for you to start separating your identity from how well you meet everyone else's needs and find a more balanced perspective. And the way I explained this to my then 11-year-old, who called me selfish because I wanted a nap instead of listening to his monologue, he says, you only care about yourself. And I said, no, I also care about myself. I can't care about you if I don't also care about me. And if you let me care about me, I will have the space and the attention to care about you. So let's work together on this. That was one of his lessons in perspective taking and reciprocity.
I like it.
So all of these little tweaks, and like I said before with the question, why that? Or what's not going the way it needs to or you want it to? It's amazing how much chaos can be brought into focus by asking the right question. Like I said, I've spent decades on this. Trial and learning, studies. I've got a master's in social work. I've written 5 books. I'm writing my 6th one right now. Got a lot to draw on. 3 boys with autism and ADHD, not to mention my own nervous system. So I draw on a lot, and it's all in service of how do we be so human together that we see one another as we are, as opposed to everything we aren't. Because at our human level, we're all alike. And if we meet each other there, the rest of it is just details.
And also, you said you feel like you do 2 days well, and then one day you go backwards. You realize that's still a day that goes forward. Right. So
I'm learning that there's still something that comes out of even the bad days. And that's what I'm learning very slowly.
Yeah.
Well, but here's the thing. Are they bad days? Or are they days in which our self-talk changes for a variety of reasons because our hormones are off, you didn't sleep as well, your meds are late, you forgot to take your meds. There are so many moving pieces that affect your experience, and the day is perfectly fine. What changes from moment to moment is your experience.
I'm just going to mute Stasha because it sounds like she's filming a porn.
She's wrestling the poop out of that dog is what's happening.
I thought I was muted. I'm just in the walk.
You was doing the heavy breathing, Stash. It sounded like wrong.
It's not. Oh my gosh! It's just because my microphone is right here. It's not that heavy.
So, Mand, I said it's not always a bad day. It's just maybe it didn't go how you wanted it to go. But in the grand, that's what you got to do when you do the grand scheme of things. The grand scheme of things, you've still moved forward. Always remember that.
And I don't know how many of you are familiar with me. I also have multiple sclerosis and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So I'm in 24/7 pain to various degrees. And I got joints that just like to pop out and pop back in, and not in a comfortable way. So on my more difficult days, if I don't find joy somewhere, I might as well give up.
Yeah.
And the joy is largely in all of the things that are going right. I could be in bed racked up with pain, but the sun is out. I can hear my puppies barking in the background. I can hear my kids laughing. And by focusing on that, it reminds me life is going on. It's still doing well. Good things are happening. I'm just much more in an observer role at this point. And when I can participate, I'll have a different experience, but I don't want to negate the experience I'm having now, just because it's not good enough.
See, and that was good for me to hear because I actually have what they call spondylolisthesis,
Ouch.
with weakening of the spine. So like yesterday, in my mind, it was a bad day because I had slipped a vertebrae. And the problem is it's all in my lumbar spine area right now. And so
Dennis, did you purposely bring people on the call that were just like me?
Yeah.
My lumbar
I
spine
did
is falling
the,
apart and I get pain shots. I totally feel that, Mandy.
And like yesterday was one of the worst ones that I've probably had in the last 6 months, to where I could tell that those nerves were pinched because I actually lost the feeling in my left leg. And I got really scared and I was like, oh my God, is this it? Because they've told me, until you decide to do surgery, there's a possibility of, losing, severing nerves, all this other stuff. But the problem is the treatment option is fusion surgery. And I'm not even 35 years old yet.
And that creates its own problems. They don't really tell you that part.
And so yesterday, like, I knew that was where a big part of the self-talk was coming from, was because it was like, okay, how do I do this? Like, how do I accomplish anything today safely? And that's where a lot of that, because I've been able to push through it for so many years, now that it is progressing and getting worse, there's those days where I'm like, okay, why can't you push like you used to? And I have to remind myself, because it's a degenerative disease, like it's only going to get worse.
One of the bigger shifts I've had to make, when I thought that I had to be the one on the stage and I had to be solo and I had to be the best this and the best that, and not asking for help and so on. So as I've gotten more and more disabled, I've had to warm myself up to the win is about the outcome, regardless of how I got there. It isn't that I can stand and I'm the one holding the flag. It's like, hey, everybody, look what we did. And I found that bringing a community along with you in the win just elevates everyone that was involved in the process, as opposed to you being the one saying, hey, be like me, I'm better than you, I have all the status. Okay, maybe I have a lot of resentment too, directed towards me and all kinds of other stuff because I left people out. But you include them, you get your needs met, they get their needs met, and everybody rises. And I have honestly found it's easier to take risks when people have my back than when I am afraid of falling in front of them. So that's one of the shifts, moving out of that, I'm independent, I can handle it all, I can push through anything, to I'm human. We do better together than separate. Let's experiment with that together and see what happens. So there's shifts that can be made to help you adapt and accommodate to your changing realities. But none of those changes have to involve giving up. It's being more creative and resourceful.
And I think that I've slowly started to kind of find my community between joining BBS and then, trying to find more people that were local. And that's always been a big thing for me, was feeling like I had support, because I never really found those people.
Well,
And now,
support and also acceptance, belonging.
right.
So, you can show up with all of your warts and scars and whatever, and they're not going to say, oh, that's not how we do things here. You're going to have to go.
Right.
They're just going to say, you're human, bring it in.
This is the first, BBS is the first community I've ever joined where I would actually get on a call looking like this, mind you. My paint and everything from my crafting business, and I
didn't even do my hair today.
Nope.
I can tell, Brian.
What can I say? I'm a mess.
Yeah.
And that, finally finding that place where you feel like you can show up just as you are makes a huge difference.
And you are good enough regardless.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good hair day, bad hair day, you're good enough.
We are all good enough. I mean, okay, maybe you can't run a marathon anymore, but the very fact is that you want to still push means that maybe you can walk 10 yards, but that's still 10 yards moving forward. There's always a positive to see in anything.
And how do you do between your ears when you do 10 yards?
Exactly. Do you see it as, oh, well, I didn't do the marathon? Or did you see it as, oh, look at that. Look, the starting line's back there and I'm here now. So, oh my God, this is fantastic.
A lot of what really fuels the gratitude of finding those little moments is being able to savor those moments. It's like, instead of eating the entire pint of ice cream, you take a scoop of ice cream, you set it on your tongue, and you enjoy every aspect of it. The temperature, the texture, the smooth, the flavor, everything. And it's not about just eating it so you can get into the next one. It's about enjoying that moment and that experience. And if you really savor it, that's enough. You don't need to keep wanting more and more and more.
That was me yesterday. I did a load of laundry yesterday, even though I was in an immense amount of pain. I got one load of laundry done, and I looked back and I said, I at least did a load of laundry today.
That's your win. That's your win to celebrate.
And you can say, instead of at least, you can say, I'm grateful I got this laundry done today.
Yeah. So don't worry about not completing the marathon. I'm still using the marathon metaphor. As long as you've done, hello, little one.
At the 15-year-old, like, who are these people? What are they up
Hello,
to?
hello from people around the world.
Yes.
Literally.
She's very confused where all the voices were coming from.
I wonder that every day.
Yeah.
These voices come.
Hey,
Yeah.
cutie pie.
Can you say hey?
Aw.
I love those curls. So cute.
That's everybody's cuteness moment for today.
Aw.
Well, I'll just have to savor it, because Lord knows if I'll get another one.
Oh, she's the last one.
Mhm.
See, yeah, Amanda is talking about a vanilla latte. Doing little experiences like that you can be completely present with go a long way in grounding you.
Yeah.
Sipping a tea, putting honey or sugar, something so distinct that it brings your attention to that moment. It's amazing what happens to you emotionally and physically when you are present. This reactivity that we tends to vanish. And the more present you can be with your experiences, the less threatened you feel.
Enjoying the moment, as they say. Because it always sounds very cliched, but it's so true.
And it's not the easiest thing to do.
No, it's not.
We spend so much time tennis matching between the past and the future. both of which are in our imagination.
Yeah.
But what's real is what we're experiencing right now. We just are very rarely present for it. But that's a
And things
huge
like
key to all this.
things like affirmations work as well. I'm writing, there's a section in my guide here, I'm writing taking your mindset to the gym. And one of the exercises is affirmations, because your subconscious doesn't know the difference between real and not real. It just doesn't know. It only knows what it's told. So if you give yourself these positive affirmations, it just thinks, oh, well, that's reality then. Okay. So tell yourself, it's a good day. Tell yourself, I've achieved this and I've achieved that. How good am I?
Well, to
Tell yourself.
piggyback on that, Daz, there's no one right way to look at a situation. Let's say you got a horse, two people looking at a horse. One's looking at the eyes, one's looking at the ass. You're both looking at a horse.
Yeah.
But if I ask you to describe it, you have a very different description. So what Daz is saying about affirmations, you might ask yourself, but what if I'm wrong? How could you be? Just another perspective of the same thing.
Yeah, that's it. There's no right or wrong with things like affirmations. It's just what you tell yourself. So if you tell yourself you're worthless, that's what you become. If you keep telling yourself you are valuable and you are amazing, that's what you become. That's an easy one, that is. It sounds complicated, but it's not. Your subconscious is quite dumb.
Well, the old Henry Ford saying, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right.
Right, yeah.
Because each of those beliefs determines what options you consider being available for yourself.
Yeah.
If you believe you can do it, suddenly you're going to look for opportunities to demonstrate that. If you think you can't do it, you're going to run from those opportunities because you think they're going to make you look stupid. All because of what you decided to believe.
I'm just seeing what Amanda just said in the chat. It's simple, but not always easy. Wrong. You make it hard.
We make it hard with all the resistance, all the fear.
Yeah. Once you actually allow yourself to say those lovely things to yourself, it becomes easy.
Let's face it. Go ahead, Dan.
No, you go for it, Brian. This is
we spend the majority of our lives second guessing, self-doubting, and criticizing ourselves.
Yeah.
When we begin trying on these new ideas, we could simultaneously say to ourselves, yeah, but this just is not true. Why am I saying this? It's your opportunity to replace what you've decided to believe all these years with what you deserve to believe.
Yeah. And it's going back to my health coaching training. And a big thing when I studied that was crowding out the bad. So you don't say to yourself, oh, I can't possibly have that. You start to say to yourself, I would like this. So if you've got a plate, you put more veggies on at a meal time. So you don't really restrict the badness. You're just crowding it out with the goodness. And the same thing goes with things like your mindset and how you think, which is your mindset, and your perception of perfection, success, and good achievements, because it's all down to how you perceive that stuff. If you perceive like what you want to get done in a day as literally like climbing Everest, then you're going to get disappointed. But if you are more realistic, and if you like, when you do things like neurodivergence, and as Bryce says, know thyself, and you work with that neurodivergence instead of against it, so you are living with neurodivergence, you are not neurodivergent.
Ding, 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 ding.
Then things become so much easier.
Yeah, I
So
don't think
many-
any of my diagnoses are who I am. There are
Yeah.
people that say I am autistic or I'm bipolar. No, I'm a human being.
Mm,
I have different experiences.
that's it.
They influence my perception and how I execute things. But underneath all of that, I'm a human being first.
I was chatting to someone a couple of days ago. Or was it yesterday? What day is it? It's Tuesday. Yesterday. And when I was helping them a year ago, neither of us really knew the best way to go. But now they've been diagnosed and assessed with ADHD, and they understand themselves better, and I understand them better. We are now helping each other far greater, and it's all down to understanding. It's not like
Beautiful.
it's not the fact that you've got to push against the ADHD. You work with it and you find what works for you, because we're all individual. Two people can have be told they've got ADHD, but they both may need different approaches on the same thing.
Well, and some people might say this is oversimplified, and they have. But when you see what is the main difference between people that are neurodivergent, diagnosable, dyslexia, ADHD, and so on, what's different between them and somebody else who has their own shares of challenges? One of the main differences is that people that are neurodivergent, their differences have been pathologized.
That's it.
That's one of the main differences.
Yeah.
Is a bunch of overprivileged academic white people got together in a room and said, this is a disorder.
For people who aren't neurodivergent, aren't ADHD, aren't this, aren't that, people just go, oh, I'm just a bit quirky. And that's it. And as you say, it's because they haven't been given a set of protocols and a label. We're all
And you don't,
neurodivergence has always been here.
and you don't need a diagnosis to say, I struggle with this.
Yeah.
My brain is not very adept at this. Could you help me? Could we work together?
Hmm.
And that's what really the social model of neurodivergence is aiming for, that you can just come up and say, you know what, I have some difficulty regulating my emotions and I'm feeling a little manic right now, without someone rearing up and saying, sorry.
Yeah.
They just say, hey, is there anything I can do to help?
It is getting better. I mean, if you go back 20 years and like the whole idea about talking about mental health was like, oh, no.
If it wasn't for social media, we would not have made the advances we have as far as talking about our story and being vulnerable about our emotions.
20 years ago, talking about mental health was you may as well be saying you've got a warty winkle. You know what I mean? It's like you don't say these things. Now it's becoming totally acceptable. I won't say totally, because there's still some people out there who are just a bit.
Now the question is, why aren't you talking about it? Whereas before it was, what are you talking about that for? People don't talk about that stuff.
And when people do actually start to talk about neurodivergence, they suddenly start to understand themselves far greater than they did maybe an hour ago when they weren't talking about it.
And just how much they are not alone. And I hope that's something that has happened for many of you as you spoke up about the struggles you have, only to realize there's at least one other person on this call who's sharing a very similar experience. And if you are not alone by at least one, then I guarantee you there's a community of you.
Yeah.
But it begins by talking about it.
Brian, I think part of it too, you brought up the point earlier where, it was always, if you said you had a label, it was, I'm sorry. And especially on the mental health side, I got all of these labels as I got older, and I've never been one to really care about a label. Now, when it came to the attention deficit, it was nice to have the label because then there was medication that could help with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't talk about my story for exactly the reason you said earlier. I didn't talk about my story and about,
battling with depression, with ADD, with having a PTSD trigger, because I got tired of people looking at me and going, I'm so sorry. Or on the flip side of it, my favorite one was, I would say that I had PTSD and people would go, well, you're a white female. How can you have PTSD?
What, so white privilege is supposed to erase life experience?
Exactly. And so it was that social conditioning where I got tired of hearing those things. So I just stopped talking about it. And now we're in a very different world to where I finally feel like I can actually have those conversations where it's because people want to better understand. People are actually seeking understanding, or they're seeking that attachment. Whereas before it was kind of that pity party. And I'm
Well,
like, I don't want you to pity me. I want you to help me.
Just this idea that by virtue of your station, that somehow is supposed to make you oblivious to problems. I remember, you guys all know who Michael Phelps is? Most decorated swimmer, Olympian. You might think, oh, he's got it all. He's got the medals, and he's the most this and the most that. How can he be depressed? Well, the guy was suicidally depressed. And it was very, very difficult to get him into counseling. But now he's saying it's the best thing he ever did for himself. It's too easy to look at someone and what they've accomplished and assume that all of this external work equals internal growth. It does not.
There are so many people out there who on the surface looks like they've got their shit together. You look at Robin Williams, you know, literally one of the funniest guys on the planet, yet he struggled with depression. And there's more and more and more out there. And that's why it's important to talk about it now.
Well,
because
one of the difficulties with like Robin Williams and that guy, DJ Twitch or whatever, who killed himself, is when you look at these people, the common thread is that, oh, they were always so happy. They were happy all the time. They lit up the room. You don't think that's a problem? That they can only have one emotion, and the emotion is all about pleasing everyone else? Those are huge red flags. These are people who didn't feel like they could be loved if they were other than happy.
It's true. It's true. And the thing is, when it comes to talking about all this, it may feel a little awkward when you're doing it, but think about it. What if that conversation you're having, whether it's in a written post, whether it's on a live, whether it's on the pre-recorded, whether it's a podcast, what if that helps just one person out there to actually make their life easier and happier and better? It's worth it.
Well, and let me tell you how that can show up. One common question in my community is, why do I keep being kind to people when they're not kind back? And my position is, you're kind to show the world that more kindness is needed.
Yeah.
You're being the change as opposed to waiting for others to change. You show the kindness first, because if somebody was in a mood and you did something nice and their mood changes, you have just saved everyone they come in contact with from an experience with somebody who's maybe being an asshole.
Yeah.
Because you were kind and shifted their mood, that ripple effect carries on because of what you did. So when you say maybe one person,
mention ripples.
Yeah, if it helps one person, it doesn't stop with that one person. Because that person is impacted, they now show up better for people.
Yeah. If you throw a pebble into a pond, the ripples that go out reach every single point in that pond. Whether there's like strange shapes on the edge, it doesn't matter. Those ripples find every single edge. And every pebble you can drop into society, i.e. something positive, and you change lives. As Bryce said, it's a ripple effect. So what if you change one person's life and then they changed two, and then those two changed two, and it just goes on and on and on.
That's how you create a revolution.
Exactly.
Right. Well, we could probably stop talking now,
I think we'll stop talking now.
but
Well, I
just
think
know that you can all follow up with me when I continue to do this work, because you realize just how much there is to it, but it's absolutely worth it considering how many neurodivergents there are and how
Mhm.
much untapped beauty there is in that community.
Right, send me your website, because I'll put that in the underneath the replay for this, so people can find your Facebook profile. I'll put that up, and your website. So
You
anyone
got
who
it.
wants to follow Bri, make sure you do. He's incredible, as you can see today. He's one of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet, and he's funny, and he's charismatic, and he's wise beyond wisdom.
Wow, I'm glad you didn't say that first. I would have been intimidated the whole time.
And if you want to leave him a nice testimonial, post it onto his
That would be
profile.
extraordinary. Yes, please.
Put it onto his profile and just say, just had an amazing call with Brian and blah, blah, blah. You know, the sort of stuff.
Yeah. In fact, I'll go post something on my profile right now about this call, and you're welcome to post underneath.
There you go. Yeah. So
Awesome. Thank you
thank
all
you,
from the
Bri.
bottom of my heart. I appreciate you allowing me to do this for you.
It was an absolute pleasure, and it was an education, and it was wonderful. And I hope you all got something from this. I hope anyone watching the replay, you've got something from this, and make sure you connect with Brian, because he's worth connecting with.
I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Game Show Wave.